And we're also sitting underneath a big, beautiful, sitting underneath a big, beautiful full moon as we enter into October. And so what I'm going to invite you to now do is just to take this moment, and if it's available to you and you wish to, you can just close your eyes, let them relax away from the screen. And you're just going to take a breath into your belly and allow your belly to just really expand and to take in the fullness. And then when inspired to, just let all of the air out. Now we're going to do that again, but the invitation now is take the biggest, deepest breath that you have taken all day, all the way down into that belly. Really feel your belly expand and get full, like the fullness of the moon. And then when inspired to, let it go. And because we're all on mute, just let it sigh its way out. Trust me, the sigh feels good. Just want to release. Today we're going to be talking about stories, and we're going to be talking about science. So now what I'm going to invite you to do is to stay connected to your breath. But now I'm going to invite you to breathe into your brain space. Direct your in-breath into your mental body, into the space inside your head, and just allow the in-breath to bring some new, fresh energy to your brain, and to let go of any thoughts that you don't want to have with you as you enjoy this Fearless Chat today. And taking another one, breathing into that brain space. Filling it up with some fresh oxygen, and then also just letting it go. And now for one final breath, a big, nice, deep, juicy breath. You're going to breathe into your heart space, where all of our stories live. Breathe into your heart space and allow some fresh, juicy energy to come into that heart space. Open it up. And then also just let that go. And now feel the sense of release and relaxation. We've filled our bellies. We've relaxed our minds. We've opened our hearts. And we are ready for today's Fearless Chat. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, so we have this gesture in Fearless Communicators. It's called elevated sparkleation. So it's a way of giving virtual applause. So thank you so much, Deborah, for that grounding, that delicious grounding. For those of you who are new to our Fearless Chats, my name is Eduardo Placer. I am the founder of Fearless Communicators. We work with thought leaders on what they say and how they say it. And this Fearless Chat series emerged directly in the face of COVID-19. And we knew at that moment in early March that our community was looking for an opportunity to gather, to be in community, and to learn what was emerging, what were the stories that were emerging, what were the conversations that were emerging. And we, over the course of, I don't know how many weeks, how many months it's been extremely responsive. It's also been a platform for the thought leaders in our community. I see Valerie Lyons here, Laura Klein-Taylor, various other people who have been featured as our storytellers and as our content leaders in this landscape. And today we have the privilege of showcasing one of our own, which is Debra Driscoll. She was in our first cohort of our signature program called Fearless Force Public Speaking for Visionary Women Leaders. This was back in 2016. She was in that first group, that pilot program. We have since done that program 19 times on 3 continents. We've done it in New York, San Francisco, also in Israel, and also in Australia. And that's our global commitment to celebrating women's voices and amplifying those. And then Deborah, as a master storyteller and communicator, chose to join in amplifying that program, standing in that allyship in working with women and their stories, and then now also leads all of our group programs at Fearless Communicators. So it's great to have Debra in our community as a master storyteller, and I'm so thrilled today to have her in the seat sharing her storytelling and her leadership. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Debra. Take it away. Elevated Sparkleish. Yes.
So pleased. I've been a little bit excited today and like in the days leading up to it, because what we're going to be talking about today, which is turning on the brain through stories, is something that absolutely turns me on. And so I'm so excited that you're all with me today in this little exploration of story. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to share the screen so we can all play along. Hit play. We can see that there. Oh, I'm right at the end. I'm at the wrong end. So you're going to see fast forward all the things that we're going to be doing today. Don't look at it now. We're not ready yet. Turning on. Here we are. We're turning on your brain on stories. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And as Eduardo mentioned, I'm on the team at Fearless Communicators. And what we do is we work with thought leaders on what they say and how they say it. That could be one-on-one. That could be somebody who's on their way to a TED stage, working towards a keynote, or just needs to work on their communication within their business. We have our Your Story Now program, which is currently operating. It was newly inspired by 2020. And we have some people on the call who have been a part of Your Story Now. We have some people on the call who are going to be with us in Your Story Now in future programming. And we also work in workshop format. So that's working with communities or organizations or big groups of people. Essentially, Fearless Communicators is working with everybody who communicates, which is pretty much all of us, and we just add the fearlessness to that. But part of what I love about Fearless Communicators, there's lots that I love, but part of what I love is that the key element that binds all of our work together is story. Your story is the story of the universe. This is a saying that I know from my work in playback theatre. And when I heard this years ago, I was like, oh, that speaks directly to my heart. Your story is the story of the universe. And it's the idea that we are all connected through our stories. And our stories are the great connector. Stories are how we understand the world. Stories are how we began to understand our worlds, ourselves, and our communities. And so when you share your story, you're sharing the story of the universe. Just that idea has stayed with me for years, and I return to it. I really love stories. So a little bit about me, for those who don't know me so well, is my love of stories has been with me for more than 20 years, actually more than 25 years, but we're just going to say more than 20. And the way that story has turned up in my life is really diverse. So as you can see there in the little pictures, I share stories. And I share stories publicly, spoken stories, and I help other people to share their stories. And that's a picture of me at one of our Fearless Force events sharing a story. I've also been working in stories as a performer. So for more than 20 years, I have been a playback theatre practitioner. And playback theatre is an international form of theatre that is based in storytelling. The way it works is an audience member shares a personal story, and the actors and the musician immediately play it back. This form of theatre is practiced in more than 60 countries around the world, and it is a great connector of communities by connecting people through story, and it has many applications. And I've been very privileged to be in various companies across the world, and it's been a big part of how I've learnt about story, because when you're a playback theatre practitioner, you are studying stories. You're studying how to listen to stories. You're studying how to play them back. You're studying why stories are important to communities. So I share stories, I perform stories, but I also write stories. I'm the girl who had the Dear Diary, and I'm the girl who still journals now. And I'm also the girl who published my book in January. So I love to write stories. I love to share stories. I love to perform stories. I am a master story weaver. And I claim that. The thing I am not is a neuroscientist. I am not a neuroscientist. I completely admire all the neuroscientists in the world. And I find it fascinating. And so right now in this moment, I'm acknowledging that I am not trained in neuroscience. I'm acknowledging that I have been the observer and the student of many neuroscientists, and I thank them for all of their YouTube posts, their TED Talks, the articles that they write that I read, because it really has helped me to understand story in a new way and an evolving way, because neuroscience is continuing to find new information. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at stories and science and what relationship they have. So I'm going to be telling a story. We're going to break down that story in terms of story craft. I'm going to give a little bit of an insight into the science that they know around stories. And then as a group, we're going to have a chance to immediately apply that new knowledge to your own stories. So why stories and science? We know stories are the great connector. We know that we understand the world because of stories. And we know that we're told to share our stories. Stories are the great connector. But when you add the science, you can create a story that not just connects, but connects. Now, what is connect? Connect is what we do at Fearless Communicators with stories. Connect is a made-up word by Eduardo Placer. Our founder and amazing story doula loves the English language, loves words, and loves to create words. And he has created Connect. Connect is the action of a good story. So the good story is going to connect your audience, but it's also going to drive your audience towards an action. And that's what we seek to do in Fearless Communicators, is help you to craft a story that is not only going to connect your audience and your listeners to you, but it's also going to drive them towards some action. And there's a way that you do that. There's a craft to that, and there's a science to that. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. The difference between a good story and a story that connects. Trick or treat. Today's full moon begins October. We're going to end the month of October, October 31st, with another full moon. And we all know that that is also Halloween. So today, for your delight, I'm going to be sharing a Halloween story with you.
So Debra, before you start, we need to unshare the screen, right? Just technology. We're going to do a little pause.
A little stop share.
Great. And now so elevated sparkleation breath, Debra, for our little preview here. And then anything we want to say before we launch into the story, Debra?
Yeah, the thing I want to say about this now is just enjoy the story. This is my invitation. We are in a learning environment, and I am going to be breaking down aspects of the story, and there's all that's going to come for the rest of this time that we have together. My invitation for you is actually like purposely shift and find your little comfy spot and get ready for story time.
I have my blanket, so I'm gonna like put myself in my little story blanket, you know, and listen to the story. Story time with Deb.
It's story time, and this story is it goes through about 10 minutes. So just relax in. You know, have a little sip of water, maybe a cup of tea. Don't go away for the cup of tea. Stay with us. Stay with us.
Yes. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, Debra Driscoll, trick or treat.
Mum, Yes, Sage, what? What? Can we go trick-or-treating? Can we do Halloween this year? And I looked down into Sage's little squidgy, gorgeous little face, and I just want to say yes. But it's not that simple. It's 2011 in Australia, and Halloween is just starting to drip through the TV set. There's a few decorations and costumes in some of the stores, but Halloween is not a thing yet. It's just beginning to come through. Sage, little Mr. 9, has seen the candy and the costumes dripping through the TV set, and he wants some of that. He wants to eat that candy. He wants that costume, and mostly he wants to eat the candy. And I, as his mother, I want to give it to him. But no one's doing Halloween. Sage, no one does Halloween. I explained to Sage around how it's an American thing and not so much Australia, and Sage, he connects to this. We can solve this problem, Mum. Little 9-year-old Sage has a special brain. This is what he tells people. His special brain is Asperger. And Asperger to Sage is, I'm a famous inventor, and my job in the world is to solve problems and create inventions. And so when he knows that there's a problem standing in the way of his Halloween, his costume, his candy, he goes into solution mode. And we talk about what's possible, and then Sage finds it, the solution. Hello, this is Sage from number 6. On the night of Halloween, Thursday, 7 p.m, my mum and I will be trick-or-treating. If you want to join in on the Halloween fun, leave your outside light on. I promise to only go to the houses with an outside light on. Thank you, Sage from number 6. This handwritten note is delivered to every letterbox on our street. Now, our street is small. It's a small cul-de-sac. There's about 10 houses. And I know that no one's thinking about Halloween. The only other kids on the street are a newborn and a toddler who live next door. They're not doing Halloween. I'm not really quite sure how this is going to be received. So as the mother, I get the emergency candy and hide it in the cupboard. But Sage's, he's set, he's got his solution. He's got his costume. He's dressed up as Iron Man, who is a famous inventor. I'm dressed up as a witch, because I am a witch. And by Halloween, he's roped in Grandma, Auntie Liz, Auntie Sands, and little cousin Bailey. And little cousin Bailey is standing there, not really knowing what's going to go on, but knowing candy's coming because he's got a little toy bucket that he's going to fill with that candy. And we are the motley crew of Halloween in the outer suburbs of Brisbane, late October, where it's not getting cool, it's actually getting hot. We wait for 7, because we can't go before 7, because Mr. Asperger doesn't like to break the rules. He said in the note it was 7, so we wait for 7. At 7 o'clock, Sage erupts into the happy dance. Now, Sage's happy dance is a manifestation of his Asperger. When he is in delight, there is a full body sound and movement that happen. Arms are up in the air, legs are flipping, and the sound that comes out of his mouth is very much like imagining a horse laughing. It's like a neigh. It's delightful. Sage goes into full happy dance and starts to dance towards the street. Everyone else in the motley crew is following, and my heart is it's tense. I don't know what's going to happen next. And then we hit the pavement, and my heart completely opens up because almost every light on the street is on. Sage does not skip a beat. He happy dances to the first door, trick or treat. And the neighbours are playing along. There's the tricks, there's the treat, there's the bowls of candy, there's the guy at the top of the street who wants to play with the tricks. And it really is magical and delightful. And we get to the final house on our street, the one that's directly across the road from us. And there's a little old lady who lives there. And you don't really see her very much. It's very quiet. But her outside light is on. Sage dances up to the door. Trick or treat! The door opens, and that little old lady you don't see very much has fully decorated her whole foyer with Halloween decorations, and she is dressed up in full costume as an amazing witch, head to toe, complete with broom and the pointy hat. She goes into full character as the witch, and to Sage and Bailey's delight, she has the biggest bowl of candy they've seen all night. It truly was magical. But the thing that I remember about that night is it wasn't just Sage and Bailey that wanted the magic. Every single person who played along on my street, all of the adults, they wanted magic too. 1 year later, I'm stirring vegetables, feeling really unmagical. The treat that I want is a really large glass of wine, crisp white wine. But I'm going to be denied that because my reality as a single mother is I'm going to have to keep stirring these vegetables, and I'm going to have to make sure that Sage eats them, and then I'm going to have to make sure the homework is done and that he gets to bed on time, and then I don't get the wine because I've got to go and finish the proposal that's due tomorrow, which I really hope is going to be successful, because the anxiety I have about next month's mortgage payment is rising and it's insidious. Mum, yes, say what? Trick or treat? Like, can I start getting ready now? What are you talking about, Sage? Tonight's Halloween, Mum. Shall I put my costume back on? No. We're not doing Halloween this year. But Mum, you said that we could. And then it drops in. The memory of days before, hurrying to get to work, making sure Sage has got everything in his school bag, and he says, Mum, can we go trick-or-treating this year? And I say, yeah. And then immediately forget that I had said yes. No letters had been sent to any neighbours. No candy was hiding in the cupboard. Nothing. I had nothing. Mum, you said that we could go. Yeah, well, you know what, Sage? Sometimes life just isn't fair. And sometimes a yes from days ago is a no today. And Sage just melted. His whole body kind of collapsed in, and these little tears started at his eyes. And he turned and he shuffled out of the kitchen. And I stood there in that really tricky moment as a parent when you know you have just broken your own child's heart. And so I slink out of the kitchen in search of Sage. And I find him sitting on the couch, hunched over little shoulders, and his hands are in his lap. And those tears that were brimming, they're now rolling. And I just sit down next to him. Sage, I'm sorry. But Mum, you said that we could go. Sage, I'm so sorry. Because you know what? Sorry was all I had. I collapsed into my sorry. Sage collapsed into me. And we just sat in the sorry. Then Sage brought the magic. He drew back, took my hand in his, and he said to me, Mum, it's okay. The magic of my little boy, who can hold my heart on the night that I had broken his. And I swore next Halloween is going to be the most amazing Halloween Sage has ever experienced. I committed to it in that moment. The trick? Sage died the following April. That was our last Halloween. I was never given the chance. to repair that broken heart. I have now survived 7 Halloweens without Sage, and each Halloween I am reminded of the trick and the treat. Each Halloween I have a choice. Do I fall for the trick of regret, the trick of lack of compassion to myself, the trick of a lack of denial of the forgiveness that's possible? Or do I treat myself to the Halloween that was amazing and magical, and also the Halloween where Sage's magical heart could hold mine? We all have choices. We all choose between the trick or the treat. Given the choice, what do you choose? Trick or treat?
Yes. Beautiful job, Debra.
So now my invitation is this. Now that you have been with me and with my story, I just want you to now be with yourself. And to fully be with what's happening in my mind. What sensations am I feeling in my body? And to just be with it, just to really notice what is present with you now. I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go into exploration around that story. So trick or treat, indeed. These are my invitations to you, and we're going to play along in the chat. What did you notice? When you were listening to the story, what did you notice? Or what are you noticing in that moment when I asked you to just stop and be with the story? What images were in your mind? What feelings were in your body? And who were you following throughout that narrative? And we're just going to play along in the chat for now, and let's see what we all have.
So Debra, do we want to take them one by one? So like perhaps give a moment for people to reflect, or what are the images that came to their mind? And then I can also feed them to you from the chat. So what are the images that stood out for people? So Laura said, stirring vegetables and wine. Totally. Broomstick and the hat. Ben says collapsing into the story. Dottie said hand holding. Robert says very sad for Sage, whose heart was broken. Angie says the Sage dance. Yes, I totally saw his happy dance. All the lights on the foyer, the lights on most of the houses, Sage's dance. That's what Jesus says. Diana says the old lady who transformed herself. Also the happy dance seems to be a resonator. I also saw the cul-de-sac. For some reason, like the cul-de-sac was a very clear graphic image that I said. I saw, Hiroko says when Sage said, it's okay, forgiveness. Angie, your motley family, the motley crew.
We really were a bunch.
The voice of Sage when he said, it's okay. What about the feelings in your bodies?
Yeah,
like
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, to shift now, what did you locate as feelings in your body? I'm curious, how are you feeling, Debra, as the storyteller?
As a storyteller, when I was practicing the story earlier today, I went into tears. This story is really close to my heart. For obvious reasons, you've all heard the story now. But I also just, the other thing that happens for me is when I tell stories of Sage, I get a really, really strong sense of connection to him and how proud I am of him And so I'm feeling a lot of like fluttery sense of love is what I'm feeling.
So beautiful. So Chris said fear that the neighbors might not show up. So that was
Yeah.
a feeling in her body. Angie says the love of your son. Joseph's feeling your pain and anxiety, both before the first Halloween and then when stirring the vegetables. Valerie said, I had a tightness in my throat when you shared that Sage had passed away. I still feel a tightness in my chest, like my sternum feels like really
Okay.
like.
So that's interesting, Eduardo.
Yeah.
Who else is still feeling the resonance of the story? That's what I might be. Yeah. I can't see everybody. This is the thing with the stop share. I'm going to stop share for a minute because I want to be with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you show me hands if you're still feeling a resonance of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Show me some hands if you feel like, so everybody on this call, let me see, with all the people on the call, yeah, I'm right in saying nobody on this call has ever met my son, Sage. But show me a hand or two if you feel that you have a sense of who Sage is, if you were following him as a character, if you feel for him. If you do, just show me one or two hands. Yeah. So most people are still feeling something and they feel connected to Sage. That's what I tried to do. That's the point. That's the part where neuroscience can give you some information. I'm going to have to go back to the screen share now so that we can follow along, because I want everyone to get what's happening here. So we know that the stories activate the brain, but what does that actually mean? Like, you know how people will say, oh, stories light up so much parts of the brain and you remember a story, but you don't necessarily remember a fact or a figure. True, 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 true. But what does that actually mean? What that actually means is that it activates hormones. So when you tell a story, what you're going to get an activation of is dopamine and endorphins. That's your classic story. That's your classic connecting story. The dopamine is going to help you with the memory. And what happens with the dopamine is we want to follow the plot. What happens next? What happens when they make it to the pavement? Are the lights on? That's being driven by your dopamine. The endorphin is like the opening, relaxing. Endorphins are going to like skyrocket if there's, fun, play or comedy in the story. Next week we're playing with comedy with Ben. But now I wanted to talk about what I'm referring to as the secret sauce, which is oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love bond hormone. And what oxytocin is doing is it's creating a sense of connection between the storyteller and the listener, but not only the storyteller, as you saw in my example there, any other strong characters in a story also. When we get the release of oxytocin, we feel connected, we feel love, and more than that, it activates our trust. We begin to trust the person who's telling us the story. So what they've found in their study of stories, all these amazing neuroscientists that I follow around, and I wish I could be them in another life maybe. What they've found is that a good story, the good story will get the dopamine and the endorphins and maybe a little bit of oxytocin. But a thrilling, well-crafted story is going to get a spike in the oxytocin. And what a spike in oxytocin does is it not only creates that place of connection and trust, but it moves towards that connection that we talk about. It moves towards, not only do I trust and feel connected to this person, but I want to stay connected to this person. I want to go the next step. with this person. So an example of one study that they did is that they had 2 test audiences, and they had the same organisation with the same cause seeking donations. They told one audience a story that was a good story. It's a good story. And they got the hormones to shift, and they got a little swell in the oxytocin. And that swell of oxytocin, yeah, a few people donated. They got a bit of money. The second test audience, they chose a story that they knew would spike that oxytocin. Exactly the same organisation, exactly the same cause, different story. That different story caused a spike in the oxytocin of the audience members, and it caused a massive spike in how much money they donated to that organisation. So the studies are now showing that what you want to do, if you're wanting to move your audience into action, into more than connecting with you, and to keep them connecting with you and to build that trust, is you want to spike that oxytocin. That's your secret sauce. So I'm just going to stop share for a memento and just take a breath there for a minute and ask if there's any responses to what that little bit of like science teachy stuff around the oxytocin. And you can write something in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you have a question or any response.
You know, first of all, I'm so moved, I don't even know how to do it myself. I might start crying because I'm still feeling it. I want to also say, Deborah, like you channeled him too, by the way. You channeled your son in your eyes, and that was too much for me. But I'm thinking like this whole storytelling and how much, you know, even thinking about my business and how I promote myself, and the idea of the trust building and the sharing and how we all have a story. And it just had me more in touch. I'm sorry, I'm going to start to cry in a minute.
We're with you, Val. I got you, honey.
This is what happens when you're an empath, daggone it. But it just had me recognize, you know, it just had me realize how powerful storytelling is in who I am and what I do and what I believe in.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Yeah. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Valerie. We have time for if there's any other responses, and it may be a completely different type of response. I just wanted to give some space for people to be able to breathe into and express what might be happening for them.
Keith just shared very interesting and powerful, I still feel it in my chest, right? So it's interesting again that the feeling of it, it's something that you continue to feel, like you told the story 15 minutes ago, but you're still feeling it. So there's something powerful about, wait a second, I'm still connecting to that story that you shared. So I'm still continuing to feel the reverberations of that. So it's really powerful. And we love your empathness, Valerie. We welcome all of it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yes. And the empathy is one of the things that you want to inspire an activation of, because you know what it is? Meow, oxytocin. Valerie's oxytocin is like raging right now. That's what's going on. So imagine if I had told that story and I land the plane. This is what we talk about in Fearless Communicators, of landing the plane. I landed the plane with all of you with saying, what choice are you going to make? The trick or the treat? Imagine if I had more time with you. And I didn't go into talking about stories and science, but I went into the magic of being with the choices that we have available to our lives. One of the things that I do when I'm not working with Fearless Communicators is I work with people in magic. And I work with people about making that choice, about being okay about the tricks of life and turning their attention to the treats. So imagine, as you're feeling now, if you'd stayed with me, say in a workshop or a longer a longer presentation where I'm now driving you towards how could you maybe add the treat into your life and just be okay about the trick. You may be driven to buy my book. You may be driven to sign up to one of my programs. You may be driven to just consider trick or treat in your own life. But this is the power of the story. It's continuing to reverberate. And in that space, when we're open, when not only our heart, but our brains are open in that way, we begin to create change. Now, how do you do that? I'm going to now give you the hot top tips on getting your oxytocin up.
And as we're transitioning, I want to add, Angie just put in the chat, brings up for me how we can think about how we talk and tell stories, specifically in light of the election and the current US climate, why we need leaders who are able to tell stories that inspire us. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then Joe, yes, your deep and touching story would indeed have opened up your audience to beautifully consider how it could impact on their future life. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing. That's part of why we are in the speaking, part of why we're sharing stories. I mean, it's not necessarily, you're not necessarily, wanting to seek the spike if you're at a dinner party, say, maybe you do. But if your intention is to open up your audience and create that connection, you want to consider, how am I going to get that oxytocin spike? And this is how you do it. Adding that secret sauce, focus on 3 key aspects in the crafting of your story. We all have 5 senses. When we use the 5 senses in our storytelling, what happens is our brains begin to create the pictures and we begin to see ourselves there, and it may even spark some of those senses within yourself. Like I know I've heard stories before where my mouth starts watering if someone's talking about a really delicious food, or if someone's talking about a smell that's really, really not great, I can feel my body start to restrict. So what happens when you use the 5 senses is you really open up that brain. You really open up that brain for connection. The other thing that you want to be mindful of is core emotions. Now there's many, 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 many emotions, and we feel them all the time. Maybe you felt many today. But there are 4 key human emotions: fear, anger, sadness, and joy. Your story wants to have a focus on at least one, but if you have more than one, more power to you. And if you can have one that transform into the other, even better. Now you may notice in my story that part of what you were feeding back to me was around, like what I said, I could see the cul-de-sac, the lights coming on. I also specifically chose that story because it had all 4 of the emotions in it. It had my anger as the mother. It had my fear that maybe the lights weren't going to be on. It had Sage's sadness and mine as well, but it also had the magic and the joy. So you see, if you have more than one of those emotions, open, 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 open. And now here is the real kicker. All of the science is showing us that the oxytocin spike is driven by character. We want to connect to a character. If we can connect to a character in the story, we are connecting to ourselves. We are connecting to the person telling the story. We are following that character, and it is opening up and expanding and spiking our oxytocin. When we can follow a character, it activates our empathy. Just going to stop share again because I like seeing all the faces. So now, just knowing that, that in the crafting of your stories, you want to be mindful of your 5 senses. You want to be mindful of those 4 emotions. And you most want to be mindful of character. This is what I want you to really take in and take away from today is do not tell the general story. Tell the personal story. Risk telling the story with a strong character, and that character may be you, or that character may be one of your clients that you're serving, or one of the characters might be somebody who's going to benefit from the donation that's being received. But when you are crafting your stories, really spend time creating your own relationship with the storyteller, with the character, so that you can share that. Because that truly is not only what I'm saying and not only what we teach at Fearless Communicators, but what the scientists say. The scientists are saying, if we can follow a character, we will buy more books, we will give more donations, we will stay strongly connected to you, because you all, even after 15 minutes of finishing, you will all still energetically connected to my son Sage. If I just told a story about Halloween and Australia and, you know, maybe Sage was in there, but I hadn't really brought you into Sage's experience, you wouldn't be getting the same emotional hit, you wouldn't be getting the same hormone spike, and it would not engage you in the same way. So many people that we work with believe that the general story is going to invite everybody in. If I tell the general story, then everybody's going to be able to relate to it. Yeah, then you're telling a good story, but you're not telling that thrilling story that spikes that oxytocin.
The dog's around you.
We just have a couple of minutes left. I'm wondering if there's any, which neuroscientist would you most recommend who writes about this subject? What I can do, I actually thought about this when I was preparing this. There's an excellent TED Talk, and there's a few articles that I can ensure that Eduardo has that can go into the email that goes out to everyone registered. But, you know, really, you know what I've been doing for years? Googling neuroscience, storytelling, especially in the TED Talk world, in YouTube. Like every now and then, it's just like what I play with. But I did just find some new favorites that I will absolutely share with you. And you can go deep into the science of it all, if that's your kind of nerdy thing to do. But the other great thing that I find about neuroscientists who study stories, they're really good storytellers. So you can actually take on the information because they're telling you in a way that they know how to craft stories. I appreciate that as a story weaver myself.
So with that, Deborah, we're at the time. So I want to thank you for this extraordinary journey through the neuroscience storytelling. And I think that that's a beautiful checklist for people to have in their storytelling, right? So 4 emotions, how many of these 4 emotions are you touching? Are you connecting to fear, anger, sadness, joy? The 5 senses, noticing that we tend to trigger sight. The sight is the easy one, but notice when you talk about taste or smell or touch, specifically now when we're in Zoom landscape, right? We forget touch. And when we speak about touch, it triggers something that we long for because we're just not touching in the way that we touched before COVID, right? So all of a sudden we can have these as tools to, again, trigger different parts of our brains, which then spikes that oxytocin. And then the third piece, is it character driven, right? Am I focusing on people? Is it people generating? I mean, and character can also be a dog, right? We can love our animals, right? But are we tracking through a story that we can connect to and it's character driven, right? Yeah. And I think that those 3 points, senses, emotions, character driven, I think is a great checklist to have by you the next time you have to speak, to ensure that you're taking it from good to thrilling. So Debra, thank you so much for those tips. Those are super valuable. Next week, we have Benjamin Peltison, another one of our facilitators. Benjamin, what are you going to be talking about?
Let me get off mute. Hi, I'm going to talk about what makes things funny. So we're going to watch a bunch of funny speeches. We're going to laugh because I'm so depressed right now. We're going to take an hour and we're going to laugh at things and restore ourselves to some sense of balance. So next week, all about comedy. Join for that. Same time, same channel.
Awesome.
Different Zoom.
Thank you so much for that, Ben. And as Debra mentioned in her presentation before, we are currently in the middle of one of our signature programs that's going to be happening next weekend. It's called Your Story Now. We actually have several people on the call who will be in our next cohort. It's next Saturday, Sunday. It's all about what is the story that's most relevant for you to be sharing now to your audience, right? And how do we propel people into action? If you're interested in learning more about that program, you can speak to Debra. We'll just put her email. It's debra@fearlesscommunicators.com, and she can share with you about that program. We do have an upcoming program. I know we have people in Australia that are on our call. We have an upcoming program for Australia that's happening at the end of the month. This favors the US time zones. As always, so grateful that you are choosing to spend your Thursday afternoon, later afternoon, early afternoon, and Friday morning for our Australian audience with us. We are grateful that you are here in this specific 3-part series, which is all around elevating your public speaking. And I'm excited to share that in the coming weeks, we are turning more towards issues that are a forefront now in the United States. So we have Maria Ewan, who is an amazing nonprofit leader who runs a nonprofit called Issue Voter. And it's all about voting and democracy and the power of that and how we can hold our legislators accountable. Then we have Jennifer Brown, who's talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we have Maisa Akbar, who's talking about what we can do beyond allyship. So all of that gears us into the election. And then no matter what the result is, after the election, I may cry, we are holding sacred space collectively. So no matter what happens, for Australians, you're welcome to join us as well. But for whatever happens for us in the United States, on that Thursday, we will gather collectively and hold the space that there is for us to hold as community together. So just wanted to give you that as a landscape for us in the coming weeks. And again, if you have to go, we know that it's at 6 o'clock, so we are complete. And if you're able to stay for an extra couple of moments, we have a little final ritual that we have to complete our session. So we're gonna allow the people who have to go. Again, thank you so much. It's so great to see you. And then again, for the people who can spare a couple more minutes, we have a final little ritual that we have to complete ourselves. So we're going to allow people to leave. Bye, everyone. Thank you. And then the invitation for those of you who are here is to raise your hand so that we see you, right? And then what we get to do is we get to see someone and we acknowledge them. So we say, I see you and I thank you. And then you move on to somebody else, okay? So we go through everybody. Once you're called, then you lower the hand, and then that way we don't call on that person again and we continue going, okay? And again, if you have to go, we get it. And if not, we're grateful that you're here. So I'm gonna start. Hiroko Itaguchi! Oh my God, I love you so much. I see you and I thank you. So Hiroko, you get to choose somebody else.
You need to unmute. Yeah, perfect.
Debra, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see you. I'm so glad that we connected after what happened in February. I'm sorry that I actually did not contact you after that, but I'm doing great. And I would like to connect with you and then thank you for being you.
Thank you, Hiroko. I love you so much. Whew. Henry, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Deborah. Valerie, thank you for being you, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Henry. Oh, let's see. Diana, I see you. I feel your energy, and I thank you.
Valerie. Joe, I see you. I hear you and I thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Eduardo, I see you. I thank you for creating this amazing space. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Sally Green. I see you. I thank you. I love all the red. Your jacket, your glasses, and your wall. It's like joyous and giving me everything.
Thank you, Eduardo. Linda, I see you and I thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Ben, I thank you. I love you. You've made my life so much better. I see you.
I guess we're down to, is Haneen still there? I'm not sure. So I'm gonna...
Angie and Laurie are left.
Who is? Angie
and Laurie.
Okay. Oh,
Haneen's gone.
All right. Hi, Haneen. Laurie, I see you. And I really, really thank you for many, many things and that dance.
Yeah, that's what I do. So am I thanking everyone?
Oh, we have Angie.
Oh, Angie, sorry. Hi, Angie. Oh, now I see you. Sorry, my screen's too small. Angie, I see you fully, and I'm so grateful. This was a beautiful session, and I just saw so many faces, new and not new, that I love. So really grateful. So Angie, thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. I want to just thank everybody. This was beautiful. I just think Deb has an incredible gift. I'm deeply moved. I'm apologizing for not being on video, but some of you know I have a bit of a crazy schedule. So thank you so much.
We're grateful and so happy for all of you being here. We love you so much. Deborah, do you want to say the final words to close us out?
Choose the treat. Choose the treat.
Choose the treat. Yes. Choose the treat. Stage happy dance. Yes. Okay, thank you all. We will see you next week. Bye.
See you next week. Big love.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you,
Joe. Happy day.
Bye.
Have a great morning on Friday. Have a great morning. Have a great day.
Thank you. Off to do some treating.
Yes.
Yes. Choose the treat.
Choose the treat.
So good. So fucking good.
God.